So I knew what I had seen. There was never a question from the first time I saw the thing that this was, and I always thought it was extraterrestrial, that this was something fascinating, and I always wanted to find out what it was. So when I put the sightings together and I realized that nobody really cared about the sightings, that it was, it was interesting to tell the stories, but it really didn't seem to convince anybody. I had gone from there, and I had accidentally run in. My father worked for the government, and there was a guy in his office who had had a sighting, and he had told me about the Canadian government investigation in the early 1950s, and I figured, well, that'll solve it. I mean, if I go to the Canadian government and find out what they were doing, and this guy had, talked with the aliens, and, had, the Flying Saucer Observatory, and said that flying saucers are real, the whole bit. And I got a little more reaction when I did all that research and put that out, and still it didn't convince everybody. And then I went from there. I came across Dr. Eric Walker, who was a former president of Penn State University, that we happened to come across, that he knew what was going on. And we, for 8 years, a bunch of us researchers bugged him, and we put out the book with all the transcripts of all the interviews and letters that we had shared with him. And I figured, well, that'll convince people. And I remember the reporter who had done the story. When we broke the story, we went to the reporter at Penn State University, and she went to interview him, and for the first time he hung up the phone. He said, I deny it, sorry, I'm busy, and hung up the phone. And I asked my co-author who lived at Penn State, who was writing the book, I said, well, when is she going back? And he said, well, she's not. They were so intimidated by this guy, and I thought, well, this is insane. I mean, you can't,
sure.
You think you've broken the story. And from there, he was going to send his files to the Truman Library. So I went to the Truman Library to look for the Walker files, and when I got to the Truman Library, they had a couple of letters, but they didn't have anything that I was really looking for. And at that point, I was sitting there at the Truman Library, and I said, well, what would there must be other documents here about UFOs. And then it came down to this thing I have on my website. What is the most powerful man in the world, the most important subject? And I went to the Truman, and then when I went to the Eisenhower Library, you have to do an interview there, and I sat in the room when I was getting interviewed to research there, and I said to them, well, I'm looking for the UFO stuff, and they already knew, so they had done a search, and they had 5 documents, and it was about 8 pages of documents or whatever it was, and they had 29 million pages of material in the Eisenhower Library, and I thought, this is something else. I mean, 5 pages out of 29 million pages, something's wrong, and at that point, I started to go around and sort of deal with this question. I've seen your questions as to, what does the president know? Does he really know anything? And that whole sort of pursuit as to this guy constitutionally should know what's going on, but does he know what's going on? So that's how it started. And I've sort of now, once I've been to all the libraries, and I've sort of been unable to 100% resolve the question, and I've sort of gone into this world of the spooks and the CIA and these type of people, this Avery group and stuff like that, which I think offers more answers than I found when I was working with the presidents.
Wow. Let me just kind of launch into it. You already made a couple points there I'm going to want to double back on. The radio show is called Time and Space, and our homepage is timeandspace.us. We are going to be speaking for the next little while here with Grant Cameron, and it's just, as I say, a thrill to get to finally talk to you. As I said to you just a couple minutes ago, I've been kind of following your work now for the past couple of years, and it's a little tough to keep up with because I'm so busy trying to investigate some stuff on my own and interviewing other people.
Yep.
And it's sort of closing a circle here, being able to come back around to you.
Sure.
The thing that prompted me to finally chase you down, of course, is these White House petitions, and in particular, Steve Bassett's now second petition. And I just want to launch into this because I really only have one line written here for my own reference, and that's the Rockefeller Initiative. I'm wondering, first of all, how you became aware of that, and secondly, why it is that Lawrence Rockefeller pursued this in the first place. What do you know about that?
Lawrence was one of the Rockefeller brothers, as you know. He was the one who had the philosophy degree from Princeton University. He was the guy who was into the ecology, all this kind of stuff. He did have some business interest, Eastern Airlines, stuff like that. But he always had this fascination with so much UFOs. I can't remember what the term it was. It's sort of this phenomena where people can get tremendous strength. A woman can lift a car if somebody's on it. He was sort of fascinated with this kind of stuff. And from the stories I heard, someone had talked to him about the Roswell crash, and he had been fascinated in this. And during the election campaign, he had decided that whoever won, and it didn't matter whether it was Perot or whether it was Bush or Clinton, he was going to go to the president, and he was going to get them to disclose the information behind UFOs.
I see. So he had this in mind. He had already kind of decided, I'm just going to go ahead and try to turn the rocks over and figure out what's there.
Yeah, and he had this personal interest in unusual things based on his background. So that's why he went, and Clinton had just happened to be in, and that's why he went to Clinton. I
see. So it really was just a matter of timing. You know, that's the other thing that I have here is Hillary Clinton's name, Bill and Hillary. Bill, of course, in office for 8 years. And if you're just saying that it was that window, if he had done this when Reagan was in or when Carter was in or whoever, he probably just would have gone to them, and it just happened to be the Clintons.
Yes, that was my understanding.
Gotcha. So, you know, just to accelerate through a few years here and jump right to the present day, you know, this is the thing that I've seen in a couple of articles. There was an article by Lee Spiegel that had come out in the Huffington Post. I'm sure there were many, many others where they were sort of challenging, hey, what is this Rockefeller Initiative? You know, what are these people talking about? And not that you would know this, I had actually exchanged a couple of emails with this Huffington Post reporter, and he was coming back to me saying just that, you know, gee, I don't know. Does anybody know what the Rockefeller Initiative is? And would anybody in the Obama administration know? Well, of course they would, because it was Hillary Clinton, of all people. So, you know, that's the thing. Once he does get a hold of the Clintons, the thing that surprised me, because I don't think I had this correct when I sort of listened to the story the first time, but this went on, this exchange with the Clintons and Bill Clinton's office, this went on for more than, 3 years? They went back and forth?
Yep. Yeah, it did.
That's incredible.
They were trying to push him off the whole time. And if you
ever that's what I wanted to get to. Right. Yeah, if you could talk about that for a minute, because I don't understand how that works.
It was almost the same way as right now the OSTP doesn't want to deal with it because of this, you know, the idea that I think it's political suicide. It's just not something you want in an election year where you're, you know, looking whether you can actually win it, even if this wasn't an issue. So in that time, what had happened was Rockefeller had made his move to the White House. The OSTP didn't really know what to do about it. Jack Gibbons, the director there, had, of course, wanted to know what was going on, so he had done a request to the CIA for a briefing to bring him up to speed on, like, what does the government know, what's going on. And Ronald Pandolfi from the CIA had gone to him and basically told him, don't touch the issue. And so he went to Rockefeller, and he basically sort of tried to put Rockefeller off. And if you talk to Scott Jones, who was in the room with Rockefeller had just basically, every time that they went to try to push him off, he would just threaten them with his power. And he would say, for example, they would say, well, you know, we really don't know if we can help you or whatever. And he would say like something like, well, I think I'm planning to put a one-page ad in all the major newspapers in the United States, asking for people to, write and get disclosure. And at that point they'd say, okay, hang on. And they would try to then appease him and try to answer his questions. Or he would say, if you see the documents, there's 1,000 pages of documents, which I happen to get through an FOIA. In those documents, you'll see that every time they try to put Rockefeller off, he says, okay, I think it's time to go to the president. And that's what they were trying to do. The Office of Science and Technology Policy in the Clintons was trying to stop him from going to the president. And he had this draft letter, which Hillary gets involved in, and it's a draft letter on disclosure to President Clinton. And he's holding the letter, and he gets like Dr. Gibbons to edit the letter, make suggestions. Hillary Clinton helps him edit this letter, make suggestions on what should be in this letter, what shouldn't be in this letter. And every time they sort of put him off, he says, okay, I think it's time to go to the president. It's like time to go and give this letter to the president and go straight to the president. So he does get to the president finally in 1995 when the president goes to his ranch in Wyoming. And one of the stories I've been told is the reason that the meeting took place there is that he was away from Washington, away from the CIA, and Rockefeller was able to get him in a position where he was able to talk to him. But that was the only time that Rockefeller actually directly talked to the president. The rest of the time he was dealing with Jack Gibbons. Now, I've got the 1,000 pages of documents. I have since then tried to recover those 1,000 pages of documents. I've been to the Clinton Library. Mm-hmm. I've been to the National. They sent me to the National Archives. I went to the National Archives. Those thousands of pages of documents, I don't know where they are. I cannot find them anymore. I've got them. I even sent them a list of the actual documents, like the dates, the times, like an inventory of the documents that they sent me. And they say, nope, can't find them. We don't know where they are. And what you got to remember with the OSTP is that it isn't an agency where all the documents are still going to be in the agency. If you know how the White House works, once the president leaves, they clean out all the filing cabinets. He takes all those documents with him, and the new administration that comes in has to start all over again. And that's what happens in the OSTP. It doesn't mean that the OSTP now is going to have all the documents from the Clintons. They will only have what they've gathered, and they're not necessarily going to know about what happened in the Clinton administration. What they will do, in my understanding, I may be wrong, but what they will do if they have a topic that comes up that they don't understand, they will ask for briefings. And that's when I did my FOIAs, when Phil Larson wrote the response. I wrote a series of FOIAs. I don't know if you know about it, but I wrote a series of FOIAs. And the first one I said to him, I said, you wrote this White House opinion on UFOs. You put it out. My question is, what documents did you use? What documents do you have in the OSTP that you used to come to this conclusion? And I'm pretty sure that when the response will come back, they'll say, no documents. We have no documents.
Exactly.
So
right.
They've made the opinion based upon whatever. They had no documentation whatsoever. And I wrote a letter to Larson, and he didn't reply to me, which is, I was going to file the FOIs anyway, but he got me very upset when he didn't answer my letter.
Sure.
And my letter would be that what happened my experience from the Clintons was, if you have a petition come in and on UFOs and Obama doesn't know, Larson doesn't know, the OSTP director doesn't know, nobody knows, what you're going to do is you're going to get briefings. You're going to go to the National Intelligence Office. You're going to go to the CIA. You're going to go wherever and say, we'd like to get a briefing on this subject. We want to know what's going on. What is the government position? And that's the important thing when I've dealt with people. I was